So let's talk trust, because this is such a vital quality to develop as you go deeper into surrender. And frankly, it is a requisite to increasingly be able to surrender to life and move from the personal will to living the divine will. And so it's also frankly just like one of the hardest things to develop, but perhaps one of the biggest unlocks you can have in the expansion of your consciousness. And so to have unconditional trust means that you can proceed forward in life and there's no concern about how things are going to work out. There's this kind of unconditional belief that things are going to work out perfectly in accordance with your favor, however that's supposed to be, which may take many different forms and probably not the form that you would have thought of, but it's all good because it's all happening for you. Now, this idea, and there's a lot of books I've read, like The Universe Has Your Back is, example, and many books like this, like you have nothing to worry about. And that sounds great, but like day to day, it's fucking hard. Like, how do you actually feel like you can trust something unconditionally in your day-to-day experience and not get stressed out, not have anxiety? Like, these are just core things we've lived with for a very long time. And so the process of unwinding these patterns or samskaras or consistent thought forms that have existed in the psyche and consciousness is really a process not of adding, but of removing. And so the way to think about it is like your initial state of being is like a bright white sun. And then as you go through life, all these things happen to you that start to inspire anxiety and tell you that this is the way that you should feel and this didn't work out, and these clouds come over you. These are all like clouds. And something like doubt, which is the opposite of trust, is an example of that. And those kind of core patterns drive thought forms like, oh, this isn't going to work out, or I don't know, I'm going to get sick, or something bad's going to happen. Like, it stems from that. And so the goal and objective is to remove that from the natural state so that trust can emerge because it's always been there. And so to do that, the first thing that you can do is you can notice when you're in doubt. And so this is where things like witness consciousness can become incredibly valuable, because as you start to observe the thoughts and there's a thought of, well, probably won't work out, or I'm not going to get it, or what if this happens? Like, you can pause and say, wait a second. Oh, look who's in doubt. And feel that. Feel the energy of that, which is why you're experiencing it, and allow it to pass through. And when that happens, replace it with unconditional trust. Now, when my teacher told me about this, I frankly thought it was bullshit. I didn't really know if this was going to work, which ironically was a form of doubt as I was evaluating this. But, through lots of practice, what I've observed is that you can learn to unconditionally trust life. And that is actually imperative for you to move into deeper levels of surrender. And I talked about this in an earlier video, but in order to trust life, there also needs to be a feedback loop. And this is where, examining your life can be quite important, where these things happen. You start to dip your toe in maybe trusting something works out for you that was actually pretty good. And then you go, wait a second, I think I can trust a little bit more. And this happens again. Trust a little bit more. And it happens again. And trust a little bit more. And all of a sudden, there's a flywheel where pretty soon you've started to become very trusting of life. Things happen, things don't happen, you're okay because you trust, right? And so having that kind of feedback loop and response to life is really, really important for, developing this habit of unconditional trust. If you want to kind of get a little shortcut or head start, one thing that I encourage a lot of people to do is write down the last 3 times that you were incredibly stressed about something, maybe over the past 2 years, or you thought something wasn't going to work out, or you were really upset. And look, I've had a lot of bad shit happen in my life. Like I lost my dad recently, like in the past couple of years, like really tough things. But when I look at all of those things holistically and what happened as a result that I couldn't see in that moment, everything worked out. There's actually lots of really good stuff that happened that I had no idea would have happened during those hard times. And so writing these out and examining this is one thing that can be very, very helpful for developing unconditional trust. Now, as you grow and surrender, there's this shift of awareness that's very hard to explain, but what you start to see is that things that are happening outside are also congruent with things that are happening inside. Like a very simple example could be like, I was recently looking for someone to help me with things around the house. And in a group text I'm in the same day, as I was like writing this out that I wanted this, someone mentions that their house assistant needs extra work. And, does anyone know anyone? That'd be an example of a really interesting synchronicity where it's like, wait a second, something's going on here. And you get into this phase where you are realizing increasingly that you are the awareness, conscious of the experience, and the experience is increasingly matching the awareness. And this line between the outside and the inside starts to blur. And you start to realize that you are consciousness and that all things emanate from consciousness. And if you are consciousness, which is all things, then how could you not trust that you would have your best interest in mind as consciousness? And so this too is a very, very interesting, deeper phase of developing trust that helps make the surrender process much easier. Now, if you're not there, I don't expect you to be, right? Like it has taken me a long time to arrive there, and yet I still go in and out of it at times. And that's to be expected. With all of these things, you read about these great spiritual teachers where overnight it happens. Yes, that can happen, but there also can be gradual shifts that are more gradual where you get a glimpse and then you come back to it. And so, that's often been a little bit more my path on these things versus like cataclysmic awakenings. So that's something you have to look forward to, which is the coolest thing ever. And the other thing I'll say is as you go deeper in surrender, there's a kind of recontextualization of the meaning of life, right? So we think about living in that kind of like egocentric phase of human evolution. It's really all about getting the things that you want. It's like, what do I want? How am I serving? This preconditioned concept of me. You get into this phase, you're trying to get spiritual growth. You're trying to expand your consciousness. And as you do that, you recontextualize life and consciousness to have the main purpose of helping you evolve. That becomes the main purpose of life. And what you see is that what gets put in front of you because of consciousness' inherent desire to evolve and expand are scenarios where you can face the things that you need to evolve. And so with that recognition and recontextualization of all of life for your evolution, you realize that you don't even need to do anything because life is going to serve up to you the exact experiences you need to achieve your goal in this period of evolution, which is to grow spiritually. And so you can just sit back and work on your response to it all because it's going to give you what you need. And this deep trust and understanding of this means that we don't have to be as future oriented, and we can rest in the peace that all is well and life will bring us what we need. So we talked about a lot today. The important thing is that trust can grow and trust facilitates surrender. They're like intermittently tied together. And like all spiritual practices, this is a practice. And we're granted this opportunity to have this practice every single day of our lives by all of the events that have been perfectly orchestrated, including watching this video to bring you to that place. So that's the idea. Sit with it. We got more surrender videos coming. If you want to get those videos, you know what to do. Subscribe. And please let me know what you think of this. Feel free to put in some comments.